If you follow the channel even at all, you probably know that one of my favorite things is to keep you guys in the loop within all things Call of Duty. That's why we talk about some of the most up-to-date things like that. But as of recently, I've seen some complaints throughout the community talking about the lack of content and all things that may come about with. And as somebody that usually just likes to tell it how it is in terms of just what is new, what the facts are, not really interject any of my thoughts into it, I hadn't really thought about bringing some of my perspective into it or even just talking about the subject at all, but it's starting to get to the point where it's hard to ignore. Black Ops 4 has touted itself as being the most updated game in the franchise's history, and while we have the introduction of events and seasons and such with DLC weapons dropped here and there, just how much does it compare to what we may expect? And are there underlying issues with some of the different models that we end up seeing? Today I want to break down everything here for you guys, give you a more so factual deep dive at some of these things, and also give you enough information that you can make your own concise opinions on the topic at hand. But that said, the big question is, where's the content? Black Ops 4 launched on October 12th, the earliest of the franchise, the earliest before that being Call of Duty 2 way back in October of 2005, in which at the very beginning we had some stuff withheld immediately. Things like the Blackjack shop were later introduced, things like some of the maps of Nuketown were later introduced, and so therefore, while it was still relatively a game that a lot of people were excited to jump into with 3 massive modes of Blackout, multiplayer, and zombies, it was still some stuff that missed some of what we have now that you might consider core functions. But that said, the first event brought along with it the first introduction of air quote content, if you will, and the drops that come along with that. Operation First Strike came on October 19th, which was only 7 days after the launch of Black Ops 4. It gave a brand new stream and a brand new way to unlock items within Black Ops 4. 200 tiers of grindable earnings for 54 days were laid out, and a lot of this initially predated the tier skips, so you had roughly 200 hours of in-game playtime that you had to play within that 54-day span. But of that, it included some things like the Blinding Glory ICR, the Damascus GKS, and the Titan variant, plus you ended up having the Hudson Blackout skin in there as well, which out of 200 different items, 4 of those were really only substantial, so a lot of them were filler stuff like stickers and other stuff you wouldn't really care about. So out of that, it maybe gave us 4 different things, but not all that much in the grand scheme of the massive content drops you might consider. And also, 1 day following that, so 8 days after the launch of Black Ops 4, we ended up having the Halloween event, in which that gave us 20 different items with, as well on the zombies side, daily callings that offered up zombies face paints, but nothing that really was too substantial. After that, the next drop that we saw was on the 13th of November, that being Nuketown releasing to all players for free 32 days after launch. On December 4th, then we saw the introduction of Seaside Sunset and Firing Range Night, which was at that point 53 days into the life cycle of Black Ops 4. Then, following that, 1 week after, Operation Absolute Zero came out as the next content update and was our first real big introduction for a content drop. That was 60 days after launch. With Operation Absolute Zero, we ended up seeing that if you had the Black Ops Pass, you had 2 brand new maps on offer, that being Madagascar and Elevation. You had 1 Zombies map on offer, Dead of the Night, and then you also had 1 new Blackout skin, that being Reaper, added in with this event as well. For those that maybe didn't have the Black Ops Pass or maybe did and just also got this along with it, the brand new Contraband stream was reworked so that it was now only 100 tiers laid out, clearly defined with no reserves, and of that, in that stream, you ended up having it 25, 50, and 100, the weapons of the Secret Santa melee weapon, the Damon 3XP SMG, and the SWAT RFT rifle. Mixed intermittently through there were also a few different reactive camos, which are actually pretty cool, but outside of that, we saw things like Mastercrafts reintroduced into the special orders and some camos thrown in the mix within Blackjack's shop. We saw Blackjack's gun game as a featured game mode that came along with that. In Blackout, we ended up seeing the ARAV vehicle added in, plus Hijacked, a brand new POI within the map. And also, finally, the coup de grace of all that, we had a brand new specialist for MP that you could use in MP, or also if you wanted to use the skin in Blackout, you could do just that. All of that came 60 days after the launch of Black Ops 4. Then, the final event that we've seen since then, or I guess somewhat smaller event, is that of the Barbarians event, another smaller scale thing comparable to the Halloween and also the Christmas-themed event within the Contraband stream. The Barbarians event was again a handful of different things that ultimately culminated in 1 more new weapon, that being the Cat 45. That came 102 days after that. So the total count as of right now on day 117 since the launch of Black Ops 4, we've had in the way of maps, 2 paid multiplayer maps, 3 free maps, and 1 zombies map. In terms of weaponry, we've had 4 weapons, that being the Damon 3X BSMG, the SWAT RFT rifle, the Secret Santa melee weapon, and the Cap 45. And I guess you could end up saying that there was a 5th if you want to count what was sold as a bundle in which the sleigh bells wasn't a part of anything you could actually organically unlock, but you had to actually pay some money for, which was a reskin of the melee again. So I guess technically 5. Then we ended up seeing 1 seasonal change to Blackout. There was a change to the mountaintops and the dead leaves aesthetic that was changed over from a more so luscious green beforehand, even though that's probably a little bit of an exaggeration there. But with that, they had for a very brief time some things like snowballs, which have ultimately been removed. In terms of unique playlists, and I'm not going to count things like Chaos Control and the Endurance modes because those are all existing game modes that just have some subtle tweaks to them in terms of either score or duration. So in terms of unique playlists, we've had about 5-ish. Forgive me if I get any wrong or if I miss any and leave out of this, but we've had Blackjack's gun game as well as Safeguard and MP, but in terms of Blackout, we've had 3 of Close Quarters Frenzy, Ambush, and Down But Not Out. So on paper, it seems like we've had a decent bit here, but how does that stack up against, say, recent years of World War II maybe even perhaps, which was the, to this day, most updated game that we've seen in the franchise since? When we talk about Call of Duty World War II, you can take a look at from launch to the Winter Siege event, the first event within the life cycle of World War II. That was from November 3rd to December 8th. So 35 days after is when we've got our first introduction of new content drops within World War II. That included a free new map, that being Winter Carrington. Whether or not you liked it or not, that reskin was something that was given to players for free, just for being a part of that event. We also ended up seeing seasonal changes to the headquarters, plus new weapons of the GPMG, the Sten, the Gewehr 43, the Trench Knife, and the Ice Pick, all within their own corresponding collections within the Quartermaster that you could get at absolutely any time. You didn't have to grind out any sort of massive tier system to get that. You could end up getting it in whatever order or whenever you wanted to. Additionally, there also was the game mode of Gun Game thrown in the mix there as well, but outside of that, we ended up seeing not too much added in before that. Then you end up taking a look at the next content drop, that being the Resistance event. That was from launch 81 days afterwards. The Resistance event launched on January 23rd, and with it brought a brand new division comparable to the Specialist, that being what we saw with Zero within Black Ops 4. Then we also ended up seeing a couple of new game modes added in through the multi-week process there, that being Prop Hunt, Demolition, and Gun Game. There were some changes to the headquarters that changed the thematics of all that, plus we ended up getting 4 brand new weapons as well with that one, that being the Volkstrom Gewehr, the Orso, the Combat Knife, and the 9mm SAP or SAP. Just about a week after that, 87 days after launch, we ended up seeing that the Resistance DLC actually dropped, to which we got 3 multiplayer maps, 1 war map, and 1 zombies map. While because of different launch dates and entirely different months of differences here between the two games doesn't really account for an equal playing ground of a 1-to-1 comparison, after 87 days we ended up seeing 4 MP maps, 1 for free, 3 paid, 1 war map, 1 zombies map, 2 seasonal changes, 9 brand new weapons, and 3 unique playlists within World War II since its launch. So when you take a look and compare the intervals, you can scratch off immediately just from the same time frame that we've already examined here with World War II. You can scratch off the Barbarians event because that falls after the parameters of the 87-day window. But in 60 days, we ended up seeing a brand new Specialist, multiple different weapons, a couple of maps thrown in the mix there, as well as a lot of stuff in terms of camos and variants and other things considered. But even through all that, Black Ops 4 is still slightly behind where World War II had the content, so we're already lacking there. But when you take a look at even the paid model, that's where it falls behind even further. Black Ops 4 currently only has 2 MP maps, whereas World War II, I guess, technically had 4 because war was a part of multiplayer, but it was its own standalone thing and wasn't in its own sort of game modes. But even still, outside of that, it's still at least 1 map shorter. So when it comes down to it, there's just simply not as much content. Black Ops 4 is since launch sitting at things on offer at a number of 17. World War II had on offer since its launch in a comparable time frame of 21. So whether you look at it from the free perspective, which actually World War II doesn't have as much free content per se in terms of maps and things that are larger content like that, so I give credit where credit is due in that regard, but it still is not as much, and therefore still falling behind, and that's where the problem lies. Players are starting to become accustomed to more things within the gaming industry, and there's a lot of things that may be able to contribute to that. One that obviously a lot of gamers will continue to compare it to is Fortnite, which, though I don't think it's a direct one-to-one comparison that warrants any basis, because it's a studio which, to my knowledge, is actually bigger than Treyarch, working all on one mode, and there's no publisher for them to sort of put timetables on specific releases. They can do whatever they want with it, whereas Treyarch has to report to Activision, and there's 3 teams that make up a comparable same staff number working on 3 different areas of the game. I digress. It's still just not as much, and the gaming industry as a whole is more so going towards a service model and continuous updates and more content continuously and ever expanding. And that's something that right now Black Ops 4 just seems to be falling a little behind in. So to me, the way that you fix this is to, 1, add more content in. That's the easiest way to put it. But in terms of that, you can end up breaking it down into, say, more free maps. We end up seeing that we had Nuketown and Seaside Sunset and Firing Range Night, and granted, those aren't necessarily all brand new content, but they are changes enough that were free and given to players in monthly intervals. Now, unfortunately, again, as we mentioned, January was a bit dry. We only got the Cap 45, and nothing outside of that. The Barbarians event wasn't the same as a specific overall map given to all players, but continue that trend. Give players monthly maps for free, add in more weapons, and maybe even shift how the weapon distribution works out. I know that one thing that I was kind of bummed that World War II didn't capitalize on was the fact that there were, say, events with 6 DLC weapons dropped all at once, but the event itself was 6 weeks overall. The way that you keep players engaged is by keeping them coming back, so drop a new one every single week, but each week, of course, allow it to be available even after that week is over. So do the same thing here at this one. Create subcategories, whereas like you had the Barbarians event, do that 3 times every other week for comparably, say, the Secret Santa, the SWAT, RFT, and the Damon 3XP. Do that kind of stuff so that it brings players back. Don't drop everything all at once. That's the problem with events, that it just does not keep players interested because everything's there right up front and there's nothing to say, hey, come back in 3 weeks. Additionally, add things like contracts in, like from Black Ops 3. I'm not talking about paid for special orders, but I'm saying in the way of free things that you can activate and, say, earn a bribe so that you have a chance at one of those weapons in the contraband stream to mark it off your list a little earlier by winning 50 games or so like you did in Black Ops 3. Add more mini events. The Barbarians event was a very pleasant surprise for a lot of people. While it might not be exactly the type of content you want, to be able to have a brand new weapon for free dropped in the middle of an event was something really surprising, and I'd love to see more. Additionally, add more camos and reactives to the game. I think that that's something that's probably the easiest of all these things and doesn't take days to weeks to months of development trying to perfect everything like a map would. I know that I've mentioned it many times here on the channel, but repurpose the numbers uniform, man. Put that on a camo. I'd pay money for that, but unfortunately we just have had rehashes of things that have been in the game for a while and don't really keep players wanting to come back every single day or every single week. So I just feel like there personally needs to be some sort of shakeup. You guys could agree, disagree, whatever it may be, that's totally fine, but that's what we're gonna call it. Black Ops 4 is slightly behind schedule and subpar in terms of what we may think in terms of the content being dropped off now, and in some of the capacity that it is being dropped, I think is a little subpar as well and could be worked on a bit so that it's much better for the longevity of the game. That said, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Love to get your thoughts and feedback here on this because it's completely opinion and everybody is entitled to their own, but I'd love to get your thoughts and feedback, start a discussion here at this one, and maybe, just maybe, it makes its way over to the right eyes, but I know that you guys have mentioned the lack of content a couple of times, and so wanted to kind of just start a discussion here on this. So drop your thoughts in the comments, drop a like if you enjoyed the video, and of course, if you are new to the channel, make sure you guys subscribe so you don't miss a single thing regarding all things Black Ops 4, multiplayer, blackout, zombies. We got you covered with the best of updates, news, information, tips, tricks, all that good stuff. So if any of that interests you, hit the subscribe button so you don't miss a single thing. If you guys also want to follow me over on Twitter and Instagram, those are the best places to get connected from outside of YouTube. Practically live on both those. So if you guys want to strike up a conversation, ask me a question, whatever it may be, link is down there in the description below. That said, thank you guys all so much for watching. My name is Espresso. I'll see you guys later. Take care and peace.